So I already told you guys I wasn't doing Piers Morgan uncensored stuff anymore because we've watched so much Piers Morgan and it feels like we're the Piers Morgan React channel. You know, it really does feel like we're the Piers Morgan React channel. And I did mean that. I did mean that when I said it, but that was before Piers Morgan released two very interesting segments. I haven't seen either. I only saw a clip from the Cenk one and it was bad, man. It was just somebody looking at Cenk Uygur saying, "You're a Jew hater. You hate the Jews." And then Cenk Uygur responded like, "What? What?" It was not great. So I gotta watch that. And I knew I was gonna watch that when it came out because it was honestly, I was laughing at it. I thought it was funny. I mean, obviously I don't think Cenk is a Jew hater, but I still thought it was funny to just see that just human interaction. Sometimes when I watch these debates, especially on Piers Morgan's show, I treat it less like an intellectual endeavor and more like I'm watching National Geographic. And that's what it feels like I'm going to be doing today. It's just going to be like, Jew hater, ah! It's like two Pokemon yelling at each other. Anyway, I gotta watch that, and I'm going to watch that. But then Piers Morgan also dropped this Jeremy Corbyn interview back and forth over this issue. And man, I haven't seen Jeremy Corbyn in a while. I haven't seen him in a while. And so I kind of like to hear what he has to say. And I remember him saying some things about Ukraine that I really didn't like recently. But I think generally speaking, if you were to line up me and Jeremy Corbyn's politics, we'd probably agree on 85% of things. So I'm interested to see what his politics are on this. Then we're going to go into my disagreements with Destiny on a UN vote, but we'll do that later. Anyway, let's start with the Cenk Uygur Piers Morgan debate.
Welcome back. The G7, including the UK and US, is calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza. Many other countries in the Middle East are demanding a full ceasefire. Israel has ruled out a ceasefire, while Hamas holds around 240 hostages who were kidnapped during the deadly terror attacks on October the 7th. It says there's already tactical pauses in its daily assaults on the Gaza Strip, where more than 10,500 people reportedly now being killed in Gaza, including over 4,000 children, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. On Sunday, the Pope made an urgent plea to stop the conflict, saying, "I pray to you to stop in the name of God, cease the fire." So with so much bloodshed, is it time for a ceasefire? Joining me now to discuss this, America's Rabbi and best-selling author, Rabbi Shmuley, and welcome back to Young Turks creator and Democratic presidential challenger, Cenk Uygur. Well, welcome to both of you. Cenk, let me start with you. Many people are calling for...
Dude, I still can't get over the fact that he's running for president, man. God, what a... Man, has Cenk Uygur ever signed himself onto a non-lost cause? And look, I actually at one point considered getting St. Jude tattooed on me with my buddy, you know, the saint of lost causes. So I'm sympathetic to lost causes, but you got to get involved in something where you're not going to lose by default sometime around, right? He got 6% in his congressional race. Now, I'm not even joshing him for getting 6%, okay? You run a radio show that's very different than running a campaign for Congress. I understand, right? He had never held elected office before in the United States, never ran for office before in the United States. Learning experience, could re-engage later. His time with Justice Democrats has shown he has contributed something, I think, at least something to, I think, the progressive politics in the United States. But running for office, not that great. But he took that learning experience of losing and said, you know what, instead of running for city council or county council or Congress again, learning from my mistakes, I'm going to go for the highest office in the land, while also there being clear disagreement on whether I can even be the president of the United States, as I was not born in the United States, which is a requirement. He got to sign himself on. Like, it's going to be hard for anybody to jump on that train if people don't even know if he can be president or not. And that's a huge barrier. And his main argument is, look, I just want there to be an alternative to Joe Biden. There isn't a progressive alternative to Joe Biden. It's Marianne Williamson. She's been running for like 6-7 months. He could have came out and endorsed her or did something like that. I know that other guy, Dean, what's his face, who gives a fuck? He's running for office now too. Why does he have to run? It definitely has somebody who's shown himself to be a proven loser on the congressional level, let alone the presidential level. Anyway, the logic never it doesn't And I'm not saying this to be mean. It's just the logic doesn't make sense for me, man. It doesn't make sense for me.
For a ceasefire, Queen Rania of Jordan, Angelina Jolie, Arab leaders, and so on. I presume you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they've murdered enough Palestinian civilians. And even Netanyahu, in an interview with ABC News, said, now that we're on the ground, we're finally pressuring Hamas on hostages. Oh, so the 7,000 bombs you dropped were totally useless. And
you know what was interesting? We got reports, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. It was about early negotiations between Israel and Hamas in Qatar, facilitated by Qatari officials, before the ground operation started. And now I want to put a huge disclaimer here. And this is something I've learned from being here and hearing people talk about Ukraine-Russia peace talks. We don't know exactly how close they were to finalizing a deal. We don't know all the details, how it all went down. Maybe this stuff we'll find out after the war is over, or like down the line in biographies, or whenever the Netanyahu coalition collapses and certain far right ministers or other ministers can more speak out or start trash talking each other. Who knows? But reports indicate that they had gotten close to reaching a deal on the release of hostages that were civilians and the sick. So sick hostages that were near death, and civilian hostages. So we're talking babies, women, and, you know, civilians. That means that Hamas would keep the hostages that are military personnel, so they would essentially be POWs, and Israel would have to give in return a 5-day humanitarian pause in fighting. Now, personally, I think that is a pretty good deal. That doesn't release all the hostages, but it resolves two issues, one stone. Two birds, one stone. On one hand, you get a lot of hostages back, not all of them, so I guess you've crippled that bird, you haven't killed it. But the other bird, which of the, you know, oh, you're not giving enough humanitarian respect to the Gazans, the world is standing against Israel for their very obvious of overbearing war effort that's been pretty brutal in a lot of ways, whether it be the bombing of the Greek Orthodox Church or any of the other instances where where I believe the Israeli military and other human rights experts believes the Israeli military has not given due conscience or due consideration to civilian casualties, as rhetoric continues to escalate. This would give some amount of like, hey, look, we gave a 5-day ceasefire for them to get the people out, and they help semi-resolve the hostage issue. I think it's a good deal. That deal collapsed once the Israeli military moved in. Now, again, huge asterisks, as we saw with how people talk about the Boris Johnson, like Ukraine negotiations. More information could come out later, as was offered by Naftali Bennett on an interview when people would cite Naftali Bennett for Naftali Bennett on the Joe Rogan interview, as people would cite Naftali Bennett on why the negotiations failed. They wouldn't consider what he said later. A point is, we don't know for sure, but if that was the deal, that's a good deal. And that's a deal that I think should have been accepted.
Collective punishment and your attempt to murder civilians on purpose as some sort of sick vengeance. So please stop the murders, ceasefire right now.
Rabbi Shmuley, your response.
Cenk is polling in the Democratic presidential primaries at 0%.
Fuck. God damn. Oh my God, he went straight for the balls. I'm sorry. I gotta reel in the swearing, but that was, oh God. Oh my God. He went straight for the balls. Oh, Jesus. What's the Yiddish word? Oh, he went straight for the schmeckel, man. He went straight for the schmeckel. God. Damn. Okay, so this is not going to be this didn't even like start with an allure of friendly conversation. And it seems that it's this guy going straight at Cenk instead of straight at, you know, his position or his policy. Hopefully he'll follow up with that. If he just does a bunch of personal attacks against Cenk, then that's bad. But yeah, no, he went straight for the schmeckel.
He has a greater likelihood of being elected the new king of France. And don't interrupt me, please. And the reason is that the American people are...
I like Cenk disputing that. You're lying. I'm not pulling at 0. What is he pulling at? Like 2? Maybe 3, I think, probably maximum. What is he pulling at actually? And you know what it'll do, and this is what all presidential candidates do, and I don't blame them for doing it. They're running a campaign, but they picked a poll that like suits them best. You see Trump do it, Cenk does it as well, especially as he's trying to drum up support for his campaign. But like in all the polls that are like semi-serious, it's like 2% maybe, 3% maybe. But I mean, like nationally, if you were to have a national poll and have Cenk Uygur on the list, like nah, like Cenk Uygur, Joe Biden, all these other options, he's getting like 1.
Decent. They understand that Cenk's anti-Semitism, which he has voiced on your show repeatedly, calling Jews genocidaires, and this is the eve of Kristallnacht, the 85th anniversary of the start of the Holocaust. He would deny the Jewish people the only dignity.
Why is he referencing the Kristallnacht? This is getting way overbearing really quick. Okay, whatever.
He left to us that we were victims of genocide, and he would say that we are the Nazis, we are the Gestapo, for simply wanting to defend ourselves.
Any of that.
Where is this coming from? Where did he? I have never heard Cenk say any of these things. I've never heard him say anything like that.
The brutality and the savagery of Hamas. Cenk.
It sounds like this guy had like a dialogue tree. It looks like he found like one embarrassing thing about Cenk, which is the fact that his presidential campaign is it's like a porch campaign. He's like campaigning from his porch, not gonna go anywhere. And so he grabs him by the balls, and then he just goes down the dialogue tree of anti-Semite, Jew hating, you like Kristallnacht. Why? I don't know why.
Cenk, you'll have your turn. Just show some decency. If you're not going to show it to my people, show it to me and show it to the viewers of the show.
Stop.
But who is
lying.
surprised
Everything
that a man? Who is surprised that a man the name of whose podcast is Young Turks, who perpetrated the Armenian genocide? The Young Turks is like calling your podcast the Young Nazis, the Young Gestapo. They killed 1.5 to 2 million Armenians between 1915.
I gotta say, man, as far as I know, they didn't name it for that reason. They're not an anti-Armenian show. I mean, Anna Kasparian is an Armenian co-host, but I would have never named my show The Young Turks, man. I would have never named my show The Young Turks. I mean, people Google The Young Turks, what's the first thing that's going to come up on Wikipedia? It's going to be the group that perpetuated the Armenian genocide. I just would have never done that. I mean, even if done in the nicest way possible, I just don't want the strays, man. Even done with the nicest of intentions. They set out with the nicest intentions. I don't want this. I don't want those strays.
In 1918, the Armenian community has begged Cenk to change the name of his show. For the first half of his life, he was a complete Armenian genocide denier.
The issue?
It's a good response from Cenk, though, because it's true. It's just stick on the actual issue, because none of this has to do with the bombing campaign of Gaza. He went from you're polling low, Kristallnacht, Armenian genocide. Can we get the Gaza? Can we get to the possibility of a ceasefire?
Now he is a Holocaust denier because he is saying that the Jews are engaged.
What the fuck? Who is this freak? Actually, look, I think through me saying what I've said about Cenk Uygur's campaign, it's not that I won't criticize Cenk Uygur. I think a lot of his commentary on the war in Ukraine has been bad. Specifically when it comes to aid to Ukraine and what he says about where the aid is going, whether it has to do with his presidential campaign. But I mean, this is ridiculous. He hasn't talked about the issue at all. He's now calling Cenk a Holocaust denier. Saying such a thing is silly. Nobody's gonna believe it. Everybody knows that Cenk believes in the Holocaust. Not everybody in the world assumingly believes, but anybody that's listened to Cenk for 2 seconds knows that he's not a Holocaust denier. He's not like some neo-Nazi, like Hamas headband. We're gonna go into Tel Aviv and expel the Jews. That's not who he is. That's not who he is at all. It seems like this guy probably does a lot of these interviews a lot, and he found a few facts about Cenk, grabbed them, threw them at him, and is now interspicing him with just the worst ad hominems possible to avoid talking about the issue. I hope they get to the issue, but if this is what this guy is going to do the whole time, then honestly, the reaction that I saw on Twitter that motivated me to see this video in the first place, of just Cenk just like yelling, which is, I think a lot of Cenk is yelling. He likes to yell a lot on his show. And I thought that was just going to be like, oh, Cenk shouldn't just be yelling like that. That's a pretty bad look. Now seeing this backdrop, I actually feel a lot more like that's probably going to be a justified reaction if this is how this debate actually goes. Hopefully they actually get to the topic instead of just calling Cenk a Holocaust denier. What a bizarre assertion.
Total,
in
utter
a genocide
lie.
of the
Can you please
Palestinians.
stop?
By the way, can I just throw out there, if this is the low standard we're using for Holocaust denial now, then can we call Benjamin Netanyahu a Holocaust denier at the very least? And this is actually just the truth. Holocaust revisionist for what he said about the Palestinians inspiring, the Arabs inspiring Hitler to kill the Jews, and that before Hitler was just going to deport them all, then he went and he talked to Palestinian leadership, and they inspired him to go kill them all. Like, that's just straight up Holocaust revisionism. But I've seen like 1 zillionth like less critique of that from the American right or the Zionist community, and I don't know what other word to use except for Zionist community, or those who are like these rabidly defensive of Israel, as they throw it out for Palestinian activists who have never engaged in 1/10 of that type of dialogue, 1/10 of that type of misinformation about the Holocaust. And Cenk has never engaged in that type of dialogue, but Benjamin Netanyahu gets a free pass for it.
Now,
This liar.
which nation? How
right.
can there be
No.
1.8
Rabbi
million
Shmuley,
Muslim Arab citizens?
Rabbi Shmuley,
Okay.
I'm going to go to Cenk. You said some very strong things about Cenk. You can now respond, Cenk.
Yeah, you should never have this guy on air. Everything he said is a lie. I don't deny the Holocaust. That's insanity. And in terms of the Armenian genocide, there is a powerful analogy there. Why was it a genocide? And yes, it was a genocide. Why? Because they moved and displaced so many people and killed civilians on the way. What is Israel doing? Moving and
This is a good angle from Cenk. This is a really good angle from Cenk.
displacing millions of people and killing innocent civilians. It is the exact definition of a genocide.
Okay, well now it depends on what the intention is or what the after effect of it is going to be. If the Israeli government ends up displacing all these Palestinians, having them basically live in the Sinai forever and then replacing them with settlers, then it is a genocide. And the fact that there are policy papers from think tanks that are made up of former Benjamin Netanyahu government officials, people that was appointed by Benjamin Netanyahu to serve in his government, and they're thinking up think tank policy papers about expelling the Palestinians, that there are groups advising the Israeli government to do that. Now, that doesn't mean the Israeli government is going to do that, but there are people within Israeli society who very much want to do that. There are people in the Knesset who very much are openly calling for that, calling for a second Nakba. I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on, but we don't know if that is what the Israeli government's intention is. And so until we know that, we don't know if it was a genocide. But whether or not you use the word genocide specifically to say if this war is going to end up in a genocide, doesn't mean you can't still call out war crimes, doesn't mean you can't still talk about the expulsion of Palestinians from the West Bank or the expansion of settler communities. And like, there's still a bunch of ways you can talk about this issue. But it's just once you use that word, you have to back it up. I think talking about the West Bank would be much easier to push the word of genocide than in Gaza, because there's a displacement ongoing. There's an ongoing displacement in occupied territory.
So I think the Jewish people are an amazing people, and their culture is beautiful, and I don't tolerate any anti-Semitism. But I think that the occupation is decaying the moral core of Israel. How long are you going to oppress these people?
But Cenk,
and I know this guy, all he wants to do is an ad hominem attack. He's a liar. And you could tell exactly what kind of indecent human being he is. But the main reason he's doing it is to avoid the topic. When are you going to stop murdering Palestinians and cheerleading it?
Okay.
If you're talking about genocide, you're the one right now doing the genocide.
May I respond?
yes.
Go ahead, more lies. Go ahead.
You know, I've spent my life debating people. Whenever someone.
Yeah, I can tell. It's all the fucking dialogue. He had all the dialogue tree options. How do you spend your life debating people, and all he's learned in all of that time is ad hominem, ad hominem, ad hominem.
Someone starts using personal names and screaming like a lunatic, they're losing the debate. Let me remain factual.
It's just you call somebody a Holocaust denier and piss them off, and usually I would agree, like Cenk does yell a lot in debates, okay? That doesn't make the words he says any less true, but he does yell a lot in debates. But if somebody were to call me a Holocaust denier in their opening statement of a debate about Israel-Palestine, then yeah, I might elevate my voice in anger.
First of all, made up
the Palestinians were offered a state in 1936 in the Peel Commission. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1947, the UN partition plan. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1967 after Israel conquered Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 2000, Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak. They rejected it.
Okay, so what he's doing now is he's throwing out every single deal or every single possible negotiation, whether or not it was written on a napkin, whatever the negotiation is, that went out where deals were made or offers were made and it failed, giving none of the details as to why it failed, issues like right of return, etc. Issues like, for example, continued Israeli military deployments on the Jordan River, Israel controlling the airspace over the West Bank, all these complicated...
Is occurred.
Oh.
Sans gave Kerfitten a Tier 1 subscription. Thank you for clarifying what is a Gish Gallop fallacy.
Thank you so much for the Tier 1. But it's just, he's throwing so many out at the same time that it's going to be impossible for Cenk Uygur to like go through them and list out any of the nuances. It's going to be impossible. Some of those deals you can definitely, when you talk about like 1948 or stuff like that, not 1948, but 1967, you find deals that make more sense in that time period that you'd be like, oh, well, this deal that was proposed may have not made sense for the Palestinians. Or you can find something in there, but he's listing it all out. Zero nuance possible. That's why I don't like these types of like Piers Morgan debates, is because if this was like a 1 hour and a 1.5 hour Twitch debate, and yes, I am saying this is better about Twitch debates, this is better about YouTube debates, is you can actually sit down and you can be like, okay, let's talk about 1948. Okay, let's talk about 1967. Okay, let's talk about 1973, Yom Kippur War. Let's talk about these things. But on this show, if you try to do that, you try to get into any of the nuances, like the more you dig down, they're just going to be like, okay, whatever. And they're going to list off 5 other things. They're going to keep smearing feces on the wall as you're desperately trying to scrub off the stain on they've already left from the feces from 1 minute ago. So it's a catch-up game. You just can't win.
Offered a state with Ehud Olmert 2008. They rejected it. Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005, and they did not create a state. In fact, where were you, Cenk, when you say that you care about Palestinian children, when Hamas stole the highest rate of per capita international foreign aid, larger than the Marshall Plan, from Palestinian children, did not build schools for them, did not build hospitals.
By the way, you can only say it's large. I doubt it's larger than the Marshall Plan when it comes like adjusted for inflation, adjusted for, I would imagine as a total amount at the time in the 1940s, possibly, but like scaled up for like modern currency value, no, I don't believe it.
Took all the money to buy bombs and to build a network of tunnels, which is larger than the New York subway system. Where were you then? Why did you only come up now? In fact,
he said per capita. Did he say per capita?
Marshall Plan from Palestinian rate of per capita international foreign aid, larger than the Marshall Plan.
Per capita foreign aid. Okay, got you. Why even? Whatever.
From Palestinian children, did not build schools for them, did not build hospitals, took all the money to buy bombs and to build a network of tunnels, which is larger than the New York subway system. Where were you then? Why did you only come up now? In fact, when Bashar al-Assad killed 600,000 children, Arab children, when he gassed them with mustard gas, my organization took out full-page New York Times ads to protect them from sarin gas. Where were you then? You don't.
I don't know how you're taking on an ad protects them from sarin gas. I think you're kind of hyping yourself up a little much there. Like if I took out a full page ad tomorrow in the New York Times that said, man, it really sucks in Sudan right now. That Mehdi guy is gonna kill all the people in Darfur, huh? That's terrible. It's terrible. Looks like he's gonna win. That didn't stop anything. I've slightly raised awareness. That didn't necessarily stop anything.
I don't care about Arab children. You are a Jew hater, defined as someone who only wants to lie and say that the Jews are...
the only, by the way, that's the only way Cenk should respond to that. You're a Jew hater. You're a Jew. Again, I actually don't think Cenk is a great necessarily debater, at least from what I've seen, right? I just don't like his debate style too much. But in this situation, his debate style is perfect because he is like the outrage that he shows is, I think, not going to be reacted to by the audience, and it's like, oh, that's a little overbearing, or oh, that's too much, because the person is just so out of lane. He's just so out of left field. He's just throwing stuff at him from so many different directions. He's not justified calling Cenk a Jew hater. He has not justified calling him a Jew hater. He did not properly justify calling him a Holocaust denier. He did not lay a foundation. He didn't take any statement for Cenk's past. Like, this is when Cenk in 1993 denied the Holocaust. Or this is when Cenk said that Jews are weird in 1994. Like, he doesn't have anything like that. And so he's not throwing it at Cenk. He hasn't justified it. And so Cenk reacting in the outraged ray, like, come on, in the way he does, I don't think it'll come off bad here. I think it'll do well. Also, I don't know what him talking about Assad gassing those people had to do with Cenk at all. I mean, I didn't watch Young Turk's coverage of the civil war in Syria. As far as I know, they did not deny the chemical weapons attacks. I know they had journalists like Patrick Hillsman on to talk about the chemical weapons attacks. And so they got a lot of heat for that. So I don't think they denied it, and I know that they did cover it. I don't know that they denied that at all. I know Patrick Hillsman. He talked to me about it.
Genocidaires.
You
and don't try to
racist.
cancel me and say that I shouldn't be on. You're not a producer of this show. Because you are ignorant of the facts and ignorant of the history does not mean that you can cancel my voice.
Cenk, your response.
Okay, so first of all, this guy is a full-blown bigot. He's one of the most racist people I have ever seen, does not value Palestinian lives at all. And everything he said about
the most racist person that I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know if he's the most racist person I've ever seen. Cenk must not be on Twitter much, okay? I think, like, Hitler Cunny Rapist 92 is probably a little bit more racist than this guy, but okay, I understand. Like, he's just calling you a Jew hater for no good reason. Like, I think you have good reason to hit back.
is 100% untrue. I was vicious in my criticism of Bashar al-Assad. I have criticized Hamas over and over again, and I think what they did in the attack against Israel was reprehensible. But for God's sake, how long are you going to occupy these people? For me, the idea of Israelis and Palestinians or Muslims or Jews being different is absurd. Those are just stupid labels that we put on people. They're all human beings. I value the Israeli life just as much as I value the Palestinian life. We're all human. Stop using these nonsense labels
Cenk, let me ask you a
to kill
question.
each other.
Cenk,
and all this guy wants to do is more murder of Palestinians.
Cenk, let me ask
when
you.
are you going to let them go?
Cenk, let me ask you a question.
There's not going to be a single productive thing said in this conversation. Oh my God. I mean, there's usually not in these types of Piers Morgan debates, but fucking hell. It's just particularly bad today, huh?
You mentioned genocide there. What Hamas...
I actually don't know what this guy on the left's position is on the Gaza war at all, because it hasn't even been said. Like, look at the bottom of the screen. It says, should there be a ceasefire? That's the topic of discussion. We're 7 minutes in. We're like 35-40% of the way through the video. Has been zero mention of a ceasefire outside of like Cenk's opening statement. This other guy didn't even lay down his position. And I mean, I can only assume that he's not in favor of a ceasefire. He's in favor of continued bombing, but I don't even know his position.
Hamas is actually in its charter dedicated to doing is the purest personification of genocide. Well, it is. They want to see the eradication.
Yeah. Why did he sigh like that? Why did he sigh like that? What a terrible reaction from Cenk. He had the, oh God, you shouldn't sigh like that. I believe it's like the original charter of like Hamas, I believe, I don't know if the updated 2017 version had the like kill the Jews behind every rock, but the original version, 1998 version, did have that. The updated version, I think, is like a lot, they use the word Zionist a lot more. But I don't know. I would have to go back and check. I'm sorry I haven't cross-referenced my 1998 to 2017 Hamas charter differences. The 2017 charter didn't obsolete the old charter? Okay, good point. Good point.
Israel, and they proved on October the 7th they will kill as many Jews as they can possibly get their hands on. So that is pure genocide. What Israel is doing in return, I don't think meets the category of genocide. right? Because they don't want to
you're
get
wrong.
rid of every Palestinian. They don't want to kill every Palestinian.
No,
they want to
that's
kill
not
every
their
Hamas
standard.
terrorist. Now, there are legitimate question marks about how they're going about this and about the civilian casualties. But there is a moral distinction between what Hamas is dedicated to doing and what Israel is dedicated to doing, isn't there?
No. First of all, Hamas is a bunch of idiots. They should take that stuff out of their charter. All it does is hurt the Palestinian cause.
I agree.
There's no call for it. It's dumb and it's immoral. But Hamas claims that they would like to do these things, and from time to time they do these attacks that are horrible and they should never do. But Israel actually kills Palestinians, actually occupies Palestine, actually denies the Palestinians a state.
I don't know what the word actually is doing here. I don't know what that makes it sound like Hamas isn't actually killing people. I mean, I don't think that's what he's trying to imply. I just don't know what the word actually is doing here. And he's like emphasizing it over and over.
So there's this absurd talk of like, oh, if Hamas was super powerful, they might deny Israel its existence. Except Israel does exist. And the Palestinian state does not exist because Israel is blocking their state. So stop using, and I'm not saying to you, Piers, but this propaganda, hold on.
You know, Cenk, you and I are almost
It's crazy. Like, he didn't even get the finish of the statement. Okay, whatever.
the same age, and I'm actually quite worried for how upset you get on TV. You got to protect your health. You're just kind of losing it. Now, calm down.
Because I'm upset that you keep advocating
when
for
you
the
keep
murder.
You're a Holocaust denier, you're a Jew hater, and I don't want to talk about the topic of a ceasefire like at all, actually. You're just the devil, Cenk. Wait, why are you upset? Why are you upset? Why aren't you cool, calm, and collected and completely indifferent to the suffering like I am? Like, Cenk sometimes goes overboard with the yelling. I've already said this before. But in this debate, this conversation, it's completely justifiable.
saying, Cenk, you have
Like
to
a
stop
terrorist.
yelling, you have to stop screaming, and you need to know the facts. The Palestinians were offered a state 7 times, and they rejected it 7 times. Bill Clinton told Yasser Arafat in 2000, you have made me a failure as president because Israel was giving you 97% of Judea and Samaria and the old city of Jerusalem, and Ehud Barak even offered the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, and the Palestinians rejected it. You simply don't know the history. Read a book. In fact, read a Wikipedia article before you get on TV. Number 2, you know, you made a very good...
Is his argument that Cenk Uygur saying that there's been a denial of a Palestinian state, and Benjamin Netanyahu has never seriously pursued a Palestinian state. The governments that negotiated the last deal with Bill Clinton, Yasser Arafat, and Bill Clinton, and the negotiations that went on, those governments are no longer in power. It wasn't Benjamin Netanyahu who negotiated that. It wasn't Hamas that negotiated that. It's completely different people, completely different government, completely different decade. I don't think we can use that to justify the continual denial of a Palestinian state or the non-starter introduction negotiations that the Israelis tried to engage in under the Trump negotiation, under the Trump plan, which was, we're going to completely divide up the West Bank. We're going to make a tunnel from Gaza to the West Bank. And in return for all this land, we're just gobbling up in the West Bank, separating and making a patchwork of Palestinian land there. We're going to give you a piece of strip in the desert, like a little bit of land in the desert. Oh, and we control your land militarily. We control your airspace. And we still have some military bases on the Jordan River. How's that sound? Yeah, it was a non-starter.
good point before, Piers, that Winston Churchill is the greatest British statesman and hero of the 20th century. Let's remember.
Winston Churchill is the greatest hero of the 20th century. He was an active proponent of colonialism, taking food and money, well, mostly food, from colonized territories during the war, causing famines. Saying, they die first before us. It's our colony, you know, we can do that. It's fine. I mean, he did good things to contribute to the fight against Nazism, but the greatest hero of the 20th century goes to the alcoholic colonizer who fought the Nazis. He had good, that's good. He thought the Nazis were bad since the start. You can give him that. He was not an appeaser like Chamberlain. You can give him that. but he was still an alcoholic colonizer, greatest hero of the 20th century. Come on, don't suck the hairs off his cock.
When Churchill was faced with a genocidal threat of the Nazis, you know what he did, which Israel would never consider doing? He laid waste to 70% of Dresden, Essen, Cologne, Berlin. He eviscerated Germany and turned it into a parking lot, murdering about 6 million German civilians. Israel has never even considered doing 1,000th of that. And FDR acquiesced to it, and he's considered our greatest president of the 20th century. And then
World War II is considered one of the most horrific wars in human history, and most expansive war in human history. It killed the most wars of any war in human history. I would not go by the standards of one of the most horrific instances in warfare in human history to say my war was moral and my bombing campaign is moral. From a war from 80 years ago, where the standards and guidelines in warfare and the processes of engagement is completely changed. You cannot just say Dresden every time an Israeli bomb hits a church and kills a bunch of civilians, or hits a mosque and kills a bunch of civilians. You can't just say tunnel every time, because even the Israelis, and I keep using this because it's one of the few that the IDF actively admit to, they bombed a Greek Orthodox church. They didn't assert there was any tunnels in there. They still don't assert that there was any tunnels in there. Is every time an instance like that happens, where the process of engagement for the Israelis was so much more loose, causing more civilian casualties, not a proper consideration for the civilian casualties that are affected or done from these bombing raids, and every single time this happens, we're just going to say Dresden, Dresden, Dresden. Remember that time when we killed a bunch of civilians before? That means we can kill civilians in the future. Yay! I would not go by the standards of people like Curtis LeMay for warfare. I just wouldn't. Personally, I would not look at the firebombing of Tokyo and say, we should live by this standard forever. We should do this. Or like, man, we were really fucked up then, so we can be fucked up now, just to a lesser degree.
And Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So and Israel has nuclear weapons, has never considered doing that. Israel opened up.
Well, they've actually. Okay, let me come at you.
The agricultural minister, I think recently, was it the agriculture minister who recently proposed nuking Gaza? It was one of the people, and this is the problem with this particular government in Israel. It is the worst. It is probably as bad as a government can get in Israel, because you've got somebody who I think is generally doesn't give that much of a fuck about democracy, Benjamin Netanyahu at the helm, who has been quite friendly with Putin in the past, my personal critiques, but had to make an alliance with the most far right of his party, while he's already far right himself, meaning that he's in bed with people who are going to say crazy shit about nuking Gaza, and is going to be actively pushing the far right Israeli settlers to go further and further and further in the West Bank, provoking more violence and engaging in what basically what is recorded out there, for what I've seen, looks like lynchings out in the West Bank.
Begging the
Rabbi,
so I have one question.
I want to come back to you on 2 points.
Simple question, Cenk.
I want to ask you a question, Rabbi.
Call Winston Churchill a war criminal on this show today. Will you call Churchill a war criminal?
Yeah.
All right, Cenk, answer that question.
Okay, so
Is that a hard question to answer? By modern standards, Winston Churchill would be considered a horrific war criminal. Curtis LeMay, and this is not even I don't even think this is a controversial statement. Curtis LeMay, who organized the bombing campaign in Japan, which isn't the same as the bombing campaign in Germany, but is probably a good example of, I know more about it because I'm American, I'm not British, right? Curtis LeMay, what he did to bomb Japan is he made these big testing grounds, and he rebuilt like Japanese cities makeshift Japanese cities or versions of them in the middle of like the Nevada desert. And then he took different types of incendiary bombs and tested them on these wooden cities, because Tokyo was made of wood at the time. It was not the modern Tokyo you see today. The modern Tokyo you see today was built up in large part because they could just basically build a city from scratch from what was about to happen. And then they found the bombs that burnt the cities the best. And then he went to Japan, was given the position to organize the bombing campaign, And what he did was he just went from top to bottom, most populated cities, and went grid by grid, like block by block, and just bombed everything he could with the intention of killing as many people as possible and as burning down as much property and as many homes as possible. With his thought being, this will make the Japanese submit quicker. This will make their war effort harder to maintain, destroy everything. He thought like rules in warfare were stupid. That was his position. And that's how he engaged to the end. And I mean, this guy was like a stone cold killer. He would get in front of the bombing raids and like fly in the front of in the front plane to make sure that his men wouldn't turn around out of fear to see these bombing raids through. So he knew what he was doing to his fullest extent. And after the war, he said, if we would have lost, I would have been tried as a war criminal. So this is not even something where the Allies like didn't consider themselves to be engaging in behavior that is maybe somewhat morally reprehensible or could be considered war crimes under definitely under modern definitions, but even then definitions in some extent. Like that type of behavior, I do not think is heroic. I think that it contributed to a war that we needed to win. But I would say that type of behavior is war criminal behavior. And I would say that is not the standards we should hold our modern militaries to, or even something that's 1/10 of the horrors that we unleashed with that bombing campaign.
So, Rabbi Shmuley.
But let me just throw out there, because I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me. The Germans would have done the same thing in our position and worse. Same thing with the Japanese. And I'm 100% positive that we had to win the war. So I don't want to like say like, oh, what was me? Both sides, and these are the same. But I'm just saying that we can be even better than them in the future.
If you're actually a rabbi, the standards of history have changed. So the Mongols went into Baghdad and killed every man, woman, and child, killed 800,000 people, the largest city in the world. Now, we don't live by those standards anymore. And right now, if a modern British prime minister or American president advocated for dropping a nuclear bomb in Japan or killing 70% of the people that live in Dresden, you're damn right I'd call him a war criminal. It's a different situation today than it was in the
That is a great answer from Cenk.
past. And so what you're saying is, hey, we only murdered 10,000 civilians and wantonly and recklessly, and we only did a partial genocide, so we're not as guilty. I'm not buying it at all.
I'm
going to throw out there, Cenk did not at all build a foundation for justifying the use of the word genocide, but he did counter the bombing Winston Churchill stuff very well.
Anything like that.
He needs to, if he wants to make that point, he has to build the foundation for it better on national television.
Rabbi, I want to ask you a question, which is the unique scenario in Gaza is that nearly half of the civilian population are children. They have nothing to do with this. They're not politicians. They're not in Hamas. They're not terrorists. They're not military. They're kids. And they are in their thousands being killed here. And I ask you, really, is there any limit, you as a rabbi, of the number of children who need to be killed to get rid of Hamas here, or is there no limit?
Of course there's a limit. We mourn the death of every Arab, Muslim, Palestinian child as if a Jewish child died. They are absolutely equal before God. That's why Israel withdrew completely and utterly in 2005, something that Cenk will not even acknowledge. There isn't one Israeli soldier, there wasn't until this new invasion, because of the attack on Sderot. I went to those places. Piers, I was there 2 weeks ago. I saw the blood caked on the walls, congealed to 3 or 4 inches. I saw the knives that were used to murder entire families. We saw the place where Thai farm workers who were growing pumpkins were beheaded. We saw the bomb.
That's the shit that really like kind of perplexed me, man. The Thai migrant workers that were murdered. What's even is it just that they're in Israel and abiding by Israeli law? They just went completely ham. They just killed everybody they saw. It was fucking insane. But again, he's not. Piers Morgan said, is there a limit? And he said, yes, there's a limit. And he didn't clarify what that limit was. I think the good follow-up from Cenk or Piers would be, what is the limit? Which, of course, he's not going to be like 5,000. He's not going to give like a number. But he has to give by like some principle, like we need good rules of engagement. There needs to be consideration of civilian casualties. He has to give some sort of answer to that.
Body of Shani Luke, and I spoke to her mother Ricarda, who was taken naked. These are religious men in Hamas, taken naked in her underwear and her bra, her dead body. These necrophilia savages. We saw all that. How many Palestinian children need to die? God forbid, not one. All Hamas needs to do is let the civilian population go south. Stop using them as human shields. Hamas wants these Palestinian children to die. Every Palestinian child to Hamas is a bulletproof vest.
But you said
for no.
Yes, Piers, save us. Yes. Ask the obvious follow-up.
The reason than to humiliate Israel.
Okay.
Let them go south and be safe.
Okay.
But Hamas wants them.
But Rabbi Shmuley,
it's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault.
Rabbi Shmuley, you did say there is a limit. What is that limit?
Moving forward, we're no longer calling Hamas a terrorist organization. We're calling them the necrophiliac army. Okay, I don't necrophiliac.
Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault.
It's what a weird. I understand what he's getting at, but I mean, I don't know if that's the first label I would give Hamas.
It's Hamas's
Rabbi
fault.
Shmuley, you did say there is a limit. What is that limit?
Pierce, it's hard to put a number on how many people Hamas is prepared to allow to die in order to destroy the state.
Okay, so he's not putting any emphasis on Israel's Israel's need to consider civilian casualties or like how they should engage with the rules of engagement. Nothing. Just like it's just. When asked about the limit of civilian casualties, he just puts the burden basically entirely on Hamas.
Of Israel. Remember, Hamas's motto is from the sea, from sea to sea, Israel will be, Palestine will be free. It's the annihilation of every Jew.
How does he not know it? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Yabba dabba doo da. Right? That's the thing. I don't know how. I would assume he's heard that phrase more than I have. You should know it.
Iran.
Oh, whatever.
Calls for it openly. A second Holocaust. This is the eve of Kristallnacht. I don't want to put a number on how many Palestinian children. I want a ceasefire right now. Hamas must surrender unconditionally, just like FDR and just like Churchill demanded of the Nazis. Unconditional surrender, release the hostages. We get a ceasefire right now. Cenk, let me ask you to call for a ceasefire by having Hamas, who you think actually cares about the Palestinian population, to announce their surrender. Call for their surrender right now. They launched this attack unprovoked against Israel. They slaughtered 1,400 people. They are holding little babies whose diapers need to be changed as hostages. Call for them to surrender unconditionally.
When he says unprovoked, does he mean there was nothing immediately preceding the attack in order to... I mean, there's nothing justifying killing civilians, period. But is he saying there's nothing immediately preceding the attack to justify an attack? Or like any sort of attack, military or civilian target otherwise? Or is he saying like there's just like no reason for Palestinians to even want to resist, period? Because these are two separate things, and the second one is much more dishonest.
All right, Cenk, final word to you.
But
okay.
But I'll be charitable and assume the first.
So, look, all this is nonsense. First of all, Israel did not withdraw. They control the borders of Gaza 100%. And as you can tell now, they cut off the water and power anytime they want. The Jewish people have been oppressed throughout history. My heart goes out to the Jewish people for all the pain and the suffering that they have endured through all of these years. But now Israel, unfortunately, is not the oppressed. It is the oppressor. Look at them dropping 7,000 bombs on grandmothers and children. There's an American nurse that explained on CNN yesterday about how she sees little kids with burns all across their bodies. So Hamas is terrible. Yes, I can call for their surrender. That's easy. I don't like Hamas. I think Hamas is Muslim fundamentalist. But it's an impossible standard, and you know they're not going to meet that standard. And because you want to keep killing those civilians to show them how mighty you are, and what a great...
See, this conversation has got... I mean, I don't know this person on the left, if he just wants to kill Palestinian civilians. I don't know how extreme he is. This is the only interaction I've seen here. You know, I would usually assume somebody doesn't want that. But considering how he engaged in this conversation, I actually cannot, in my mind, 100% reach and say, like, he doesn't want that 100%. I'm going to assume that just based on me wanting to believe in other human beings. Big mistake, obviously. But this conversation has reached such levels of this, like, hyperbolic nonsense. There's nothing. There's nothing to be gained here anymore. There's no conversation here. This is just blood sports. People criticize me for the hippy dippy roundtable and hippy dippy championship, like reducing debate to just yelling matches and wrestling. But I mean, come on, man. Come on. If this is the stuff on mainstream TV you're gonna get, my stuff is tame in comparison.
Great oppressor you are. I'm sick of it. And it's not only ruining the Palestinians and causing their deaths, but it is ruining, it is causing the moral decay.
He didn't call Jews bloodthirsty. He called you bloodthirsty. What? Oh, God damn. This is so awful.
Blood libel. This is
blood libel? Really? Yeah, no, you know what? I think right off screen, Cenk is actually looking into source materials, and it's just Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Get out of here.
A blood libel against the Jewish people. You may as well just say that we drink the blood of Christian children in our mouths. Cenk, you are guilty of a blood libel on the eve of Kristallnacht. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh my God, what a scummy little bastard. God damn. I have never felt more sympathy for Cenk in my life.
I'm going to call...
It is a blood libel. Change the name of your show away from Young Turks who are genocidaires who killed 1 million Armenians.
I'm going to try and wrestle things back to the host here and call a ceasefire for now. It's been a fascinating debate, very passionate on both sides. I get that. I appreciate you both agreeing to debate each other. I think that's important in this.
That wasn't a debate. Let's be clear. That wasn't a debate. The guy on the left didn't talk about, like, really a ceasefire all that much. It was mostly just attacking Cenk. The little bit he did talk about it, he immediately moved on from it. Anytime Cenk gave any pushback, it's just more attacks on Cenk's character. God, it's so bad.
Situation. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. This guy's ruining. There's tremendous anti-Semitism in the world. By crying wolf, he's actually hurting the Jewish cause tremendously.
From people like you.
Okay, you're a bigot. Stop killing Palestinians, you bigot.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you.
Wow, the truly height of political conversation in the modern age. I gotta look at these comments. I gotta see what people were at. Please, for the love of God, nobody fell for this dude's bullshit. Please. If someone attacks your character instead of your arguments, then you know he is a loser. True. I love how Piers said this debate is important. I didn't even think about that. True. It's a very important debate. Very, very important debate. Very important debate. For those wondering, Piers has already asked Cenk if he condemned Hamas in another interview. True, he did. I remember that. Oh my goodness. I've seen Piers' face more than my father's these days. These are good comments, actually. You know you lost the argument when you saw... Okay, I already said... Anyway, man, what a mess. Jeez Louise. I don't know who this guy on the left is, but I hope I never see his face again, man. God, that was awful. Ooh.